Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. As always, just one small request is that you smash up that like button and subscribe to the channel if you get any value from this content. But let's start out with just in warning signs, warning flash. Bitcoin all exchange reserves have dropped to the lowest level ever. Supply shock is coming. I love one of these comments here in response. So sick of supply shock. Okay, so this is a thing. It's a thing on a long enough timeline that we need to be paying attention to. But to say it short term, oh no, there's going to be this huge supply shock. Let's just cool out a little bit here. So that you can see 2.4 million, I'm kind of blocking it, my microphone is at least, but 2.4 million Bitcoin available on exchanges. I've talked about this on my channel for several years now in terms of what a supply shock will look like one day. And here's the really fascinating thing. The all-time high in Bitcoin's supply in its peak was the week of COVID in 2020. And remember what happened after that? All that money printing happened. A lot of people bought Bitcoin. They took them off of exchanges. And ever since then, the supply of Bitcoin available on exchanges has been going down, and it's going to continue to go down until a point when I do believe one day you're not going to actually be able to just buy Bitcoin. Maybe you'll still be able to buy through some instruments like an ETF or something like that, but actually being able to buy Bitcoin, that's going to be very difficult. Like you're actually not going to be able to go on Coinbase to buy Bitcoin. And let's say somebody were to sell 10 Bitcoin on Coinbase one day. Well, what would that look like? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they just auction it off in really small supplies to certain bidders, but there will be a time when supply shock is a thing. Is supply shock a thing now? We'll see. But it's always something to be paying attention to. It's always everything is something, and it's one step closer to the inevitable with Bitcoin. But let's move on from World War Bitcoin, the best account on X. Be sure to follow WW Bitcoin on X. If you told me that the NASDAQ would peak in February and then experience a 26% drop over the next 2 months, and then ask me to give a guess for where I thought Bitcoin would be after a 26% drop in the NASDAQ, I would have guessed somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000. Bitcoin is $87K right now. At the moment that I'm making this video, it's above $90,000. And my goodness, what is going on? Shall we call it a decoupling from the stock market? Let's hold our horses on that right now. But guys, there is something significant in the waters right at this moment as we're seeing the stock market collapse, we're seeing the 10-year yield rise, and usually what happens when those two things happen is that we see the DXY get stronger, but the DXY is plummeting. And what's getting stronger? Gold's getting stronger. It's gone kind of parabolic here. And then in yesterday's video, if you did not watch yesterday's video, I'd strongly recommend it. There's an article I talk about in that video with the trade after the trade. And the thing that I'm wondering right now, and it seems to be playing itself out, is that Bitcoin strength right now is kind of a rotation as we're seeing gold get to unsustainably high levels short term. Potentially, I think it's going much higher over the medium and long term. But right now, just a little too hot that there may be a rotation. And I'm actually going to present evidence in this video that there is a rotation happening right now into Bitcoin. And we're seeing still gold is going to kill it, but we're seeing the trade after the trade with Bitcoin, excuse me. And so something to pay attention to. Where's that chart? Here it is. Old whales versus new whales. This is fascinating to me. This is something else here. So Miles Deutscher, very well-known influencer on TikTok and X, we're currently witnessing the largest increase in new whales in Bitcoin history. Whales are stacking Bitcoin at a record pace. And so you can see the pink section here, new whales, and look at what's happened in 2024 and 2025, a significant increase in these new whales. Now, is that entirely just because of the ETFs? I mean, I would certainly assume that some of this is ETFs, but it doesn't necessarily equate for that significant of a spike in new whales, especially you could say over the last 3 to 5, 6 months. That is not entirely just ETF accumulation. So this is fascinating here. And this is kind of supporting a potential decoupling narrative, which it's still too soon to call, but there is some kind of shift. And we shall not ignore that. Ignore it at your own peril, what's going on with Bitcoin right now. Another thing to pay attention to, I was really interested by this. So from Axel Adler Jr., I don't follow him. I do now. Okay, as of today, Bitcoin's foundation RP realized price continues to slowly rise with small local decrease since February 2025. The speculative premium MVRV, market value, realized value, is compressing, and the total annual return, network return, fluctuates around 46%. This is a classic accumulation phase. That right there, that sentence I just read, is the thesis of his whole post. He's saying that this is an accumulation phase. And the reason why I'm highlighting that comment is if you look at this chart here, you can see the small orange section where my mouse is, this section that's circled. Could you make a case that this is similar to July of 2020, summer of 2020, where there was a small orange section here, or, early 2019, small orange section, although that might have been just exiting the bear market that I think about it in early 2019. But we have July of 2020, this 2020 section here, where there was a little bit of orange. Or is this the early stages of a broader section of orange on the chart here? And so what Axel Adler is making a case is that this is a repeat of 2020. And look at what happened after that orange section went pink again, is that we skyrocketed. And it's not the early stages of the bear market. We will see. He is saying this is classic accumulation phase. And based off of a lot of other things that I said, you can make a compelling case that we're going to flip pink again sometime soon. How long will we remain pink? I tend to think that perhaps we wouldn't spend all that much time in the pink section, but that we would see Bitcoin's price rise. But this is a bullish looking chart. Let's see how it plays itself out. Next, also from Axel Adler, I did not realize it was the same person. Bitcoin price, Google Trends interest. Since January 2025, the Google Trends Index for the search query Bitcoin has fluctuated between approximately 30 and 100 points. The average support line is around 30 points. This background level reflects consistent interest from investors. Each major surge in search queries has coincided with market volatility. Mostly to the upside, but there's also some surges to the downside. You can see a significant surge recently where Bitcoin went under $75,000 in price, a significant surge in search interest. So this is something to pay attention to. Google search interest, if you don't know what to look for here, just go to trends.google.com and type in Bitcoin. And then here's the United States interest in the United States all time. Now, what I would say with a great deal of certainty is that we're never going to have the kind of euphoria search interest in Bitcoin as we had in December of 2017. And we also had a very high interest in 2019. Maybe we would exceed 2019. I don't know. But you can see 2021, it didn't get anywhere near there. But if we were to look at Dogecoin around this time in 2021, the first and second quarters of 2021, what you would see, I'm sure, is a significant increase in interest in Dogecoin. Let me just do a real quick worldwide. Let's see what that looked like worldwide. I wouldn't be surprised if it was all that pretty much the same. Yeah, pretty much the same. A little bit higher for 2021 and lower in 2019. But something worth paying attention to. Every one of these spikes in Google search interest is significant. We had December 2024, Bitcoin peaked at $108,000. We had March of 2024, where Bitcoin broke its previous all-time high before the halving, which was a moment of significance. So if you see Bitcoin search interest spike up again, that's probably a good sign that you should be looking for an exit of sorts. Moving on, Bitcoin, quote, Bitcoin is decoupling from stocks, or maybe a 4-week lag between the S&P 500 and Bitcoin. So, okay, let's throw this is why, let me just say this. This is why I would say we're a little bit early in trying to communicate any kind of decoupling narrative with Bitcoin and with stocks. So this person's making the case that there's just a 4-week lag. Any kind of deviation, one or the other, will catch up. Excuse me, I almost burped there. But, okay, so does that mean that Bitcoin is going to now crash to levels where it's more correlated with stocks? Or, and this is more so my perspective right now, is that we have a brief period where we're going to see some kind of a relief rally in the stock market, and it will actually catch up with Bitcoin. And then Bitcoin could potentially hit a new all-time high, maybe, maybe not. But then after that, we would see, in my opinion, don't kill the messenger. I mean, I'm not the messenger. This is my opinion. I think they're all going to come down. I think that the end of 2025 is going to be quite bearish. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope that we do see, I have a lot more confidence with that perspective when I look at the stock market that February of 2025 was the peak for the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. I am much more open-minded with crypto, but I do think at the end of this year that we will be near a bottom and not a peak for crypto as well. But if we have a full decoupling, that would be massive. And there's a case that you can make that that's where we are heading. We'll just have to wait and see. Fact, 2 more politicians are now endorsing Senator Loomis's plan to buy 1 million Bitcoin. Conclusion, America wants to buy Bitcoin. All right, cool. We have 2 Congress people who have joined with Cynthia Loomis. Nothing but love for Cynthia Loomis, senator from Wyoming, has been very vocal about Bitcoin and wanting the United States to establish a more significant reserve than what President Trump has proposed, and being a big fan of Bitcoin. Great, love it. 2 out of 500 plus, let's not get too excited, but everything is something, as Devin and I always say during our Friday live streams. Moving on. Did you know Tuesday is an interesting day in bear market declines? And like I'm saying, I do believe that we are in a bear market in the stock market and that we are going to continue a little bit lower, fair amount lower. And so, hey, reminder, in 2008, even as stocks fell 50%, long SPX on Tuesday was strongly positive for the year. Tuesdays tend to be reversal days in bear markets. I am actually making this video on a Tuesday, and it's really interesting to see that on Monday, we saw a significant decline in the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Dow. And today, we're seeing a significant increase in all of those. And it's Tuesday, at least the time I'm making this video. So just something to keep in mind. Maybe Tuesday is a day that you do some scalps with stocks or whatever, or even with crypto, because crypto is having a good day on Tuesday. We'll see what Wednesday looks like. But moving on, bear market rallies during 2007 to 2009 timeframe. Reminder, in 2008, rallies were repeatedly sold off. Stop buying the dip. I am not a fan of buying the dip. Looking at this chart that we see with the S&P 500, when would I have bought? Well, the S&P 500 bottomed out on March 9th, 2009. I would have waited somewhere around here for some sign of a higher high, so here we are, May, maybe sell in May and go away. So more like August, I'd be more interested in buying, but not any time before then. And you can see these rallies, these bear market rallies from 2007 to 2009 in the S&P 500, 11%, 7%, 12%, 7%, 24%. And, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people thought that that was the bottom, December of 2008. And I think if we had known what quantitative easing was, December 2008 would have been the bottom, but 24% rally, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people were like, all right, it's time to get back in. And then boom, one more final flush out. And what we saw in March of 2009, that was the time to buy. And so, but I don't like trying to time the bottom. This is my mindset with stocks and cryptos. I don't like trying to time the bottom. I just try to get in somewhat close to the bottom. And it's worked out well for me. It worked out well in August of 2024. I bought very close to the bottom. It didn't work out as well this time around, which I'm really I'm frustrated about it. But I'm in profit now. But Liberation Day, I bought 3 weeks of crypto. I bought crypto for 3 weeks leading into Liberation Day, and then that added more uncertainty to the market, and we dumped a little bit more. And now, at least with crypto, it looks like a week post Liberation Day was the bottom instead of Liberation Day itself being the bottom. But anyway, it's worked out well for me. I think it can work out well for you if you're willing to exercise some patience. Okay, moving on. We have George Gammon quoting Zero Hedge here, said another way, the last time we saw a monthly drop in the USD like this, it was followed by a 15-plus year bull run. All right, Zero Hedge, the biggest monthly drop in the US dollar since ... the announcement of QE1. One way or another, Trump will get his easing. I am convinced of that. One way or another, there will be quantitative easing. Now, during my live stream that I made earlier today, yesterday from your perspective, a lot of people have been challenging me on this mindset of like, well, what will your mind change if we get quantitative easing? That was a specific question that I got from somebody on my live stream. And my answer to him was no, that's what I'm waiting for. That's what I've been waiting for this whole time is quantitative easing. And then I'm going to be I'm going to be a proper moon boy when it comes to altcoins and when it comes to Bitcoin. But that's post quantitative easing. And so what's the rub here? I think a lot of people are anticipating quantitative easing to come sooner rather than later. I'm tending to picture the end of the year or early 2026 being an introduction of new rounds of stimulus and easing. But I think a lot of people have, and I would say it's more of an emotional reaction. They have a perspective that we're going to get quantitative easing like a month from now or this summer, in the Northern Hemisphere at least. And I just want to remind you guys that these processes take a little bit longer. And it may even be that my perspective as to when quantitative easing is going to come is I'm being a little too optimistic. So you just have to keep this in mind. Let's let the market do what it does and let's be prepared. Let's not be sidelined when that time comes, but let's be ready to go in aggressively when quantitative easing comes. I hope they're right. I think more so they're just being a little too impatient. So anyway, moving on. This is fascinating to me. This goes back to 2023. There has been a perfect correlation between the dollar index and 10-year yields, and we have seen quite a deviation since then. So Jim Bianco, do I follow Jim Bianco? Yes, I do. The breaking of this relationship is a measure of stress in the market. It continues to widen. Higher rates are not supporting the dollar right now. This means they might have to go a lot higher to stop the dollar from falling. Let's go to the next tweet here. Screaming red headline tonight, Bloomberg dollar spot index falls to lowest since January 2024. So that's different than the DXY. The DXY is lower than it's been since 2022. So over the last 70 days, BBDXY has lost 7.87% of its value. This is the second biggest loss over 70 days in 15 years and is still falling. Wow. However, the January 2023 low was coming off a massive dollar peak when everyone rushed into safety of the reserve currency in wake of the Russia-Ukraine war. This move is slumping to oversold levels. So something's up with the dollar. It is in reaction to what I would say is a significant shift that I've been calling for years, and there's other people who have been doing the same. That we're all seeing this process play itself out. But it's kind of scary to me. Let me go back here to the yields. I mean, looking at the yields versus the dollar and seeing the dollar and the stock market plummet, we're in kind of uncharted waters. So, all right, just don't get too greedy. If we see Bitcoin pump really hard and even see some kind of an alt moment, just please, I'm begging you, don't get too greedy. So, actually, let me do this one first, and then I want to talk about the 4% rule. Now, Brett_ETH, I love his charts on X. This is something to keep in mind. If you're going to walk away from whatever this market gives us as a winner, where are you going to put your funds? Honestly, I am a big proponent in gold still, after maybe a little bit of a cool off with gold and gold miners, everything having to do with precious metals. Let's look at what Brett says here. Gold/SPX, the monthly RSI has broken above the 70 for the first time in 14 years. And you can see this chart dates back 100 years, more than that. So break above 70. You can see that happened in 2004, happened for a while throughout the aughts. Last time it happened before then was the 70s. Last time it happened before then was the 30s. And a lot of people compare now to the roaring 20s. And so we'll see. But This is the first time in 14 years that the RSI, the monthly RSI, has broken above 70. The past 3 cycles, when it broke above the 70 RSI line, it ignited the start of a decade-long rally of gold in its price in comparison to the SPX, to the S&P 500. Yes, there were years where the SPX outperformed during the green shaded areas. When looking at a chart, this zoomed out. It's not one to take quick trades off of, obviously, but we're probably looking at 10 years, 10 more years, because the SPY peaked in its gold valuation in 2021. So maybe 10 more years of gold continuing to outperform SPY. Does that mean that we will have a lost decade in the S&P 500? It's possible, actually. But what I think more so is that it's just gold is the play. Gold and gold miners. And then if we do see a crash at the end of this year or a recession, post-recession, silver is going to be a fantastic play. All right, so just keep this in mind. You know, I will be much more in metals and in miners than crypto throughout 2026, I think, even though I'm very bullish for 2026. So maybe I'll say throughout the rest of this decade instead. All right, the 4% rule. 4% rule is stupid. Instead of building a portfolio that I will have to sell off during retirement, instead build a 7-figure dividend portfolio that pays me $8,000 per month in dividends. I plan to leave this entire portfolio to my kids one day. I've quoted this account, Devoted Dividend Investor. I really like his content. It's really helping me think through what my goal should be. And so what's the 4% rule? You build up a stock account that you then sell 4% of that account every year post-retirement, and then hopefully you die with still some kind of support under you. I really like this concept of building a portfolio where I get dividends on that portfolio and get enough dividends to sustain me and my wife, into our old age, and then never selling any of those stocks, and then my kids inheriting that after I die. I like that much better than 4%. I don't think I'm going to live to 100 or 110 or anything like that. But what if I do? Or what if my wife does and she's selling off 4% every year, and my wife is very healthy? I think she's going to outlive me by at least a decade. I want her to have access to funds that she'll be able to draw from and not worry about some stupid 4% rule. Okay, but that is it for all of the best of X stuff right now. Bitcoin is $90,745 at this exact moment when I'm making this video. It is very close to resistance. And it's pierced through its upper Bollinger Band levels. I tend to think over the remainder of this week that we're not going to go much higher. You never know if we are in that gold, Bitcoin's the trade after the trade thing. Maybe we're going to skyrocket. I tend to think we've got a few more days left in this week that we've come close to a peak for this week, and then maybe we'll see stochastic reset on the daily. And who knows, maybe we'll go higher over the next couple weeks here. But Bitcoin is now in a clear uptrend, has put in a higher high. That's great to see. The total altcoin market cap is very close to being in an uptrend, but it's not yet. Let's see what some other cryptos are at. Oh, Ethereum, look at you go, $1,697. I'm being a little sarcastic with that. XRP, $215, maybe soon a breakout with XRP. Solana's looking very strong still, $145. Dogecoin, 17 cents. Cardano, 65 cents. Chainlink, 13.85. We still have, I keep saying it, a decent amount, a long way to go with the altcoins. Right now, it's Bitcoin's show until hopefully we see a new all-time high with Bitcoin. Trump is trending on DexScan, and of course, Fartcoin is doing the same thing. Fartcoin, man. Well, that's a great way to end this video. So again, I really appreciate it if you've made it this far. Thank you for sticking with me. If you could do me a favor, smash up that like button, leave a comment in the comment section, and hit the subscribe button as well so that you don't miss a thing. Every day at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, United States, there will be new content available for you where we go through the best of what is showing in the markets right now. So have a great rest of your week. I'll see you in another video. Peace.